Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the most dangerous enemies are not the ones who stand against you openly, but the ones who stand beside you quietly, smiling, nodding, pretending to care, while secretly hoping for your downfall. They hide behind kind words, polite gestures, and forced smiles, but if you look closely, if you pay attention to the subtle patterns, you can see the truth, and when you see it, you can no longer afford to ignore it. One of the most insidious and dangerous forms of hatred is the kind that hides behind a smile. It's not the open enemy you see coming from a mile away. It's the person in your inner circle, someone you trust, who claps when you succeed but secretly hopes you'll fail. And the tragedy is, this kind of hatred often passes unnoticed for years. You keep mistaking it for indifference, or you tell yourself they're just tired, or going through something. But deep down, something in you knows the truth. When someone's support is conditional, it doesn't nourish you. It starves you slowly. Think about it when you achieve something. Maybe you land a promotion, finish a difficult project, or even just make a positive change in your life. A true friend lights up. They feel genuine joy because your win doesn't diminish them. But a person who secretly resents you will show their support in doses, like a doctor giving a patient just enough medicine to keep them alive, but not enough to help them heal. They'll give you just enough praise so they don't look suspicious, but if you pay attention, you'll notice it's often laced with backhanded compliments, subtle qualifiers, or even awkward silence. Psychologically, what's happening here is projection. Your success forces them to confront their own stagnation. Instead of being inspired, they feel threatened. Instead of asking, "What can I learn from this person's discipline, persistence, or skill?" they ask, "How can I pull them back down so I don't have to feel this way?" And they might not even be fully conscious of it. That's what makes it so difficult to spot. It's not always malicious in an obvious way. It's often a twisted form of self-preservation on their part. This is why it's important to pay attention to the tone of someone's reactions, not just their words. When you share good news, do they celebrate it with the same energy they would if it were their own? Or do they nod politely and quickly change the subject? Do they ask questions that encourage you to share more about your achievement, or do they try to minimize it by pointing out flaws, risks, or the fact that it's not really that big of a deal? The thing is, a person's emotional investment in you can't be faked forever. You might not notice in the early stages because life is a mixture of highs and lows, and during the lows, even resentful people can appear supportive. After all, your struggles make them feel more secure. But in the highs, in those moments where you rise above your previous self, that's where the mask slips. And you'll feel it, not always in what they say, but in what they don't say, in the warmth that's missing, in the subtle cooling of their presence. From a philosophical standpoint, this is an old story. Envy has been recognized for thousands of years as one of the most corrosive forces in human relationships. In ancient literature, envy is often the seed of betrayal, the quiet rot in the foundation of trust. It doesn't declare itself with a loud announcement. It eats away quietly, while the structure still looks intact from the outside. And by the time it's obvious, much of the damage is already done. You can't force genuine support out of someone. You can't argue them into feeling happy for you. And you shouldn't waste your time trying. The healthiest approach is to observe without judgment at first, but with clarity. If you start to notice patterns, support that comes in small, reluctant doses, praise that sounds like it's been filtered through gritted teeth, don't dismiss it. The reality might be uncomfortable, but it's better to face that discomfort than to let it slowly erode your confidence and trust. I'm not saying you should cut people off at the first sign of discomfort. Life is complicated. People are complicated. Sometimes those reactions come from a place of personal struggle, not actual hatred. But if it's a consistent pattern, if their warmth depends entirely on you staying small, unthreatening, and in your place, then you need to ask yourself a serious question. Is this person truly on my side, or are they just playing along until my success becomes too obvious to ignore? And here's the truth. Your success will never be safe in the presence of someone who resents you. They may not sabotage you directly, but they'll chip away at you in small ways, questioning your decisions, withholding emotional support when you need it most, and making you feel guilty for aiming higher. And if you allow that to continue, you're effectively letting someone else dictate how brightly you're allowed to shine. The human spirit cannot grow in an environment where its victories are met with thin smiles and silent resentment. It needs the company of those who believe your light doesn't dim theirs. Never settle for conditional support. It's not friendship, it's not loyalty, it's a cage disguised as companionship. When someone truly hates you but doesn't have the courage or the social position to show it openly, they won't usually come at you head on. That's too risky for them. They know that open confrontation would expose their intent, and with that exposure, they'd lose their position in your life. Instead, they take a quieter, more insidious route, subtle sabotage. This is not the kind of sabotage you see in movies. No grand betrayal or dramatic confession. It's psychological. It's carried out in moments so small you could almost miss them. They drop a casual remark that undermines your confidence before an important meeting. They forget to pass on information that would have helped you prepare. They introduce just enough doubt into your mind that you start to question your abilities, your worth, even your direction in life. The dangerous thing is that subtle sabotage often hides under the mask of concern or helpfulness. They might frame their comments as just being realistic or making sure you don't get hurt. On the surface, it sounds like they're protecting you. But listen closely and you'll hear the tone. It's not protective, it's limiting. The aim isn't to help you grow stronger, it's to keep you small enough that you never outshine them. Psychologically, this is rooted in insecurity. Your progress is a mirror they don't want to look into because it reflects their own stagnation, their lack of courage, their refusal to face their own failures. By sabotaging you, they can maintain the illusion that you're not really ahead of them. Because if you fail, then you're just like them. And they can keep their worldview intact. It's a deeply cowardly form of competition. Instead of improving themselves, they lower the playing field so no one wins. And because they often cloak their sabotage in subtlety, they can gaslight you into thinking you're imagining it. You tell yourself, maybe I'm being too sensitive, or they probably didn't mean it that way. That's the trap. They rely on your good nature, your willingness to give them the benefit of the doubt to keep doing what they're doing without being called out. Philosophically, it's worth noting that this is one of the oldest forms of human rivalry. Even in ancient literature and scripture, the enemy is not always the invader at the gate. It's often the person within the walls, the one breaking the foundation stone by stone. Because they know you personally, they know where to aim their efforts, they know your insecurities, they know your history, they know exactly where to place the knife, so the wound is deep but hidden. And here's something crucial. Subtle sabotage often starts small but escalates over time. At first, it might just be lukewarm encouragement or mild criticism. Then it becomes consistent negative framing, small acts of interference, or spreading doubt about you to others. Eventually, if left unchecked, it becomes an unspoken campaign to ensure that you never fully realize your potential. The antidote to this is clarity and boundaries. You can't afford to ignore repeated patterns. If every time you share a new idea or ambition, this person finds a way to dismiss it, minimize it, or delay it, that's not coincidence, that's intent. And intent matters more than words. When you start to suspect this is happening, you have two choices. You can either confront them directly, which will often force the mask to slip, or you can quietly distance yourself and remove their access to the areas of your life they can sabotage. Both approaches require courage, because this kind of subtle enemy often exists in the form of someone you've trusted for years, and cutting off, or even limiting, someone like that can feel like tearing away part of your own history. But history doesn't outweigh your future. There's also a moral dimension to this. By allowing subtle sabotage to continue unchallenged, you give that person power, not just over your outcomes, but over your mindset. You begin to censor yourself, to think twice before sharing good news or ambitious plans, not because you doubt yourself, but because you're anticipating their reaction. That's when you know the sabotage is working. You're adjusting your behavior to accommodate their resentment. The truth is, no great achievement survives in an environment of constant quiet opposition. You might make small progress, but you'll always feel like you're swimming against a current you can't quite see. That current is the undercurrent of their envy, pulling at your ankles every time you try to move forward. At some point, you have to decide that your growth matters more than preserving their comfort. You have to recognize that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life, especially those who are secretly rooting for the show to fail. Subtle sabotage is still sabotage, and the longer you tolerate it, the more it becomes a collaboration, one they start but one you enable by staying silent. Stop cooperating with your own undermining. One of the strangest dynamics you'll ever experience when someone withdraws emotionally but still stays close physically. They don't leave your life outright. They don't block your number or move to another city. They might even still show up to gatherings, reply to your messages, or maintain the same surface level rhythm you've always had. But something is missing. It's the emotional intimacy. It's the warmth. And you can feel it, even if you can't always explain it. When someone truly values you, their presence has depth. Conversations have substance. Even small talk carries a sense of genuine connection. But when someone secretly resents you, that emotional investment starts to fade. They keep just enough contact to monitor your life, but not enough to contribute to it meaningfully. It's like they've shifted from being an active participant in your story to a detached observer, watching from the sidelines, waiting to see what happens next, perhaps even hoping for a stumble. Psychologically, this is a way for them to manage their conflicting feelings. On one hand, they still want access to you. Access to your information, your progress, your circle of influence. On the other hand, they can't bear the closeness because closeness demands sincerity, and sincerity would expose the resentment they're trying to hide. So they choose proximity without intimacy. They remain in the room, but they no longer share the same emotional space. You'll notice it in the little things. The conversations that used to go deep now skim the surface. The genuine curiosity about your life is replaced by polite, obligatory questions. They stop volunteering information about themselves, not because they've suddenly become private, but because the relationship has shifted into a kind of guarded standoff. They give you just enough to keep up appearances, but not enough to invite closeness. From a philosophical perspective, this creates a dangerous illusion. Because they're still physically present, you might convince yourself that nothing is wrong. You think, well, they're still here, so they must care. But that's not always true. Presence without emotional engagement can be just as destructive as absence, sometimes more so, because it breeds confusion. You don't grieve the loss of the relationship because technically it hasn't ended, but you're constantly left with a subtle itch, a feeling that you're sharing space with someone who is no longer truly with you. And here's where it gets more complicated. Sometimes the withdrawal isn't even conscious. They might not have sat down and decided, I'm going to stop caring about this person. Instead, it's the gradual erosion of goodwill. Every time they see you succeed, every time they feel overshadowed, a little piece of their desire to connect fades away. Over time, they become more comfortable maintaining a safe emotional distance. It protects them from the discomfort of their own jealousy, but it also robs the relationship of any real vitality. This pattern often leaves you doing more of the emotional work. You deserve a seat. You're the one initiating conversations. You're the one sharing updates. You're the one trying to bridge the gap, only to be met with vague answers and a noticeable lack of enthusiasm. And here's the truth. It's exhausting. You start to feel like you're carrying the weight of a relationship that should be a mutual exchange. If you're honest with yourself, deserves a seat, you'll admit that this emotional withdrawal has already changed you. You've stopped sharing certain victories because you don't want to deal with the flat responses. You keep some struggles to yourself because you know they won't offer the kind of support you need. And in doing that, you start withdrawing too. Not out of resentment, but out of self-preservation. The problem is, relationships built on this kind of guarded distance eventually become hollow. They still exist in form, but not in spirit. And when a relationship loses its spirit, it's only a matter of time before the physical presence also fades, or worse, lingers long enough to become a constant reminder of what's been lost. You have to be able to recognize when someone is no longer truly walking alongside you, but simply walking near you. Because proximity is not the same as partnership. Someone can be in your life and still not be with you. At the end of the day, it comes down to this. Relationships require not just physical presence, but emotional presence. If someone has withdrawn emotionally while keeping just enough connection to stay informed, that deserves servati, that's not loyalty. And you deserve allies, not silent watchers. One of the clearest ways to uncover hidden resentment is to watch for the gap between what people say and what they do. Words are cheap, they can be rehearsed, manipulated, delivered with a smile while hiding entirely different intentions. But behavior, especially repeated behavior, is harder to fake. Over time, it tells you what a person truly believes about you, no matter what comes out of their mouth. Someone who secretly hates you might tell you they care. They might call you a friend, a brother, a sister. They might say they're proud of you. But then you notice that when you need them, they're absent. When you succeed, they're quiet. When you struggle, their concern is either delayed or non-existent. And it's not because they're too busy, They always seem to have time for other people, other events, other priorities, just not you. This is where many people get trapped. We've been conditioned to take words as proof of loyalty. If someone says, "I've got your back," we believe them because it's easier to trust what we hear than to confront what we see. But life will teach you, often the hard way, that trust isn't built on promises. It's built on patterns, and patterns can't lie for long. From a psychological standpoint, this mismatch between words and actions is a form of cognitive dissonance, not for them, but for you. Your brain struggles to reconcile the two realities, the affectionate language and the cold behavior. And the human tendency is to cling to the more pleasant version, the one that doesn't require you to rethink the relationship. That's how people end up keeping manipulators, saboteurs, and resentful friends in their lives for years, because they judge loyalty by speech, not by conduct. Philosophically, it's an ancient problem. In almost every culture's wisdom literature, there's a warning against the double-tongued person. The one who blesses you in public but curses you in private, the one whose lips drip with honey while their heart plots against you. We tend to think of this as a rare type, but in truth, it's common. Not because people are inherently evil, but because envy and insecurity are part of human nature. And when people don't confront those emotions, they try to cover them with performance. That's why you have to become a student of patterns. If a person consistently fails to follow through, if their presence in your life feels selective, warm when you're down, cold when you're up, that's not random. That's a signal. If they only seem engaged when they can play the role of rescuer, but disappear when you're doing well without them, you're looking at a person whose sense of importance depends on you needing them. It's also worth asking yourself, what do they do when you're not in the room? Do they defend your name when others speak against you? Or do they stay silent? Do they share your wins with pride? Or do they subtly downplay them when speaking to mutual friends? You might not catch every instance, but over time, the truth leaks through. You'll hear about the things they've said, the opportunities they didn't pass along, the moments they could have advocated for you, but didn't. This is why I often say, someone's real opinion of you is revealed in the moments where it costs them something to support you. When it's inconvenient, when there's nothing in it for them, when backing you might make them look smaller by comparison. Those are the moments when actions expose reality. And here's the hard part, you have to be willing to accept the truth when you see it. Many people recognize these inconsistencies, but choose to explain them away because the cost of acknowledging them feels too high. It might mean losing a lifelong friend. It might mean admitting that a family member is not truly for you. It might mean standing on your own without the illusion of their support. But illusions are dangerous because they keep you tethered to relationships that drain you. If you've been paying attention to the patterns and they don't match the words, believe the patterns. If they consistently fail to show up when it matters, believe the absence. If their encouragement feels rehearsed but their actions lack investment, believe the hollowness. In the end, it's better to be surrounded by a smaller circle of genuine allies than a crowd of performers whose loyalty is only skin deep. The people who truly value you will align their words with their actions, not perfectly, because we're all human, but consistently enough that you never have to wonder where you stand. When someone's words and actions don't match, trust the actions. They will tell you the truth every single time.